The Manchurian Candidate theory is the only theory that answers all of the facts that I was able to accumulate over a 2-year research.
His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has been dry cleaned.
In that 1962 film, Staff Sergeant Raymond Shaw is a prisoner of war held by the North Koreans near the border of Manchuria.
I have conditioned them, or brainwashed them, which I understand is the new American word.
The soldiers are brainwashed by Chinese agents. Shaw is singled out for special treatment, hypnotically programmed to kill.
Shoot Bobby Raymond through the forest.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's more than just a movie.
This is a very happy moment for me, for now I am free. Free from McCarthy, free to oppose Eisenhower and his war policies.
Something really did happen to American soldiers in Manchuria.
Some may think I'm forced to stay behind, but on the contrary, I am here because I want to be.
1953. The Korean War is over. American prisoners of war released from a brutal captivity. Instead of showing gratitude, the soldiers angrily renounced their citizenship.
We're not going back to the country we love, to our homes, to our loved ones.
These soldiers are the first casualties in a new era of brain warfare, says Raymond Leck, a former Marine and author.
These soldiers were no longer soldiers. They didn't act like soldiers. They didn't behave like soldiers. They were broken.
During the war, more than 7,000 American POWs are held in special re-education camps on the border of Manchuria.
They were given notebooks, they were given pencils, they were taken into classrooms, large auditoriums, 10, 12, 15 hours a day. They were lectured to about the merits of communism.
But that's just the beginning. For many soldiers, harsher techniques are used with devastating results. One psychiatrist calls what happens menticide,
which is killing of the mind. What they did is took away from this man's mind free will.
As these formerly secret documents show, the soldiers begin issuing anti-American statements, broadcasting anti-war diatribes from inside Korea. And it doesn't stop after most POWs return home. Some soldiers are jailed, others reprimanded. But a hardcore batch of POWs have been programmed to act like time-delayed weapons inside the United States.
They actually set up communist front organizations. They'd give a name like Former POWs of Korea for Peace. And their ultimate motive was to take over the United States government.
Sleeper cells, mind-controlled agents. It's a prospect that frightens and fascinates Americans who, in the grip of the Cold War, believe they are losing the battle for the human mind.
I deem it a great privilege to participate in this ceremony of cornerstone laying for the national headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency.
The Eisenhower administration is eager to win that war. A new government agency is formed, the Central Intelligence Agency.
During the 1950s, there were really no political limitations on the CIA. Virtually anything was justified in the name of national security.
John Marks searches through thousands of declassified CIA documents to find what he calls a secret history of the CIA's mind control work. What he discovers convinces him the CIA was deeply involved in advanced mind control research. Research that went far beyond the boundaries of what most Americans even dreamed was possible, and well beyond the boundaries of what was ethical or even legal.
The intelligence business is about the idea of controlling people, of making them do things against their will. And if one were able to control people's behavior, we'd be that far ahead of the game.
The details of the CIA's mind control program reveal the agency may be trying to create its own Manchurian candidate. By 1953, the race to control the mind is on. biological agents, psychosurgery, brain implants, hypnosis, and drugs. These were investigated in more than 100 projects at universities, clinics, even prisons. Hundreds of researchers inside and outside the government were involved.
The behavioral sciences in that period were very much in their infancy, and what the CIA did was provide funding to some of the more innovative thinkers, sometimes who were outside established orthodoxy.
Far outside. According to this declassified document, a report on the combination of hypnosis and sodium pentothal, some techniques are officially considered to be experimental. And there's a warning that there will be many a failure, but also that every success with this method will be pure gravy. The programs are given innocent-sounding code names like Bluebird and Artichoke. But soon, the code becomes sinister. MK Ultra. One of the CIA's first programs centered on exploring the potential of an experimental compound known as lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD.
What the CIA was doing was examining all the possible ways that human behavior could be controlled. They looked at things like LSD at great length. It seemed to cause a model psychosis. It seemed to be a way of making a person go through a breakdown.
The purposes of LSD were severalfold. One was to make somebody so psychotic and disorganized that they would be discredited.
Dr. Colin Ross, a psychiatrist who spent decades investigating the CIA's mind control programs, agrees that the agency worked hard to unlock the potential of LSD.
Under MK Ultra in 1953, the CIA was concerned that the world's supply of LSD, which was all manufactured by Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in Switzerland, might be bought up. And so what they did was they contracted for $400,000 at top secret clearance level with Eli Lilly Company to manufacture and supply LSD to them.
The CIA's leading mind control scientist is Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a trained chemist.
Gottlieb was an imaginative thinker. He was willing to push the barriers, push the limits.
In 1953, Gottlieb begins to test LSD, first on himself, then on his colleagues. His programs investigated everything from Soviet interrogation techniques, exposure to radioactive chemicals, and the strategic properties of electric fish.
The CIA's drug testing place in technical services, all the participants in it had an agreement among themselves that they could test on each other in an unwitting way. And literally you had people at work and getting LSD in their morning coffee from time to time.
MK Ultra is more than just a bunch of nerdy scientists tripping out in the lab. Before long, the researchers are experimenting on unwitting civilians.
The CIA set up safe houses in New York and San Francisco where people from the underworld would be tested. Prostitutes, Johns coming in off the street with the prostitutes would be given doses of the drug.
Word gets out quickly in academic circles that the CIA is testing a mind-bending drug. Harvard professor Timothy Leary and a Stanford grad student named Ken Kesey sign right up.
There developed a demand for the drug because some people liked it. I mean, for the CIA, they thought they were doing something that would unlock communist secrets, but a lot of the test subjects, particularly students, had an experience they liked.
But soon after Gottlieb's LSD work begins, it turns deadly. As these documents show, a government scientist, Dr. Frank Olson, is secretly given LSD, served from a bottle of Cointreau by Sidney Gottlieb at a top-secret government retreat in Maryland.
And Frank Olson had what would classically be called a bad trip. He lost it. He thought that his friends were out to get him. He got into paranoia. He had a horrible time.
Turns out that Frank Olson was more than another unwitting government guinea pig.
He was an officer at Camp Detrick, which contracted with the CIA, and he was involved in some secret biological chemical weapons development, and it appears he might have been on the edge of becoming a whistleblower.
Olson suffers an apparent mental breakdown, is taken to a special CIA doctor in New York and given powerful sedatives, but only gets worse.
And what happened was after 4 or 5 days, Frank Olson committed suicide and/or jumped out of a, all we know is he jumped out of a window in the Sattler Hilton in New York City across from Penn Station. and the cause is still being disputed.
The Olson case is kept confidential. Collateral damage in the CIA war to control the mind. It will be 20 years before Frank Olson's story is publicly told. In the meantime, the CIA ramps up its mind control programs even more. The results are shocking.
It's just almost impossible to grasp how this could actually be going on.
Dosing private citizens and its own scientists with LSD is just part of the CIA's mind control work. The rest of this secret history is disturbing, sometimes shocking, but not to the people who've actually studied it and lived it.
When I joined, they had stories about the parapsychology and the LSD experiments.
Bob Baer is a former CIA field agent. When he is hired in 1976, he hears the stories of the outlandish mind control programs and believes them.
This is all done in the context of the Cold War.
The communists and fellow travelers are under orders to fight the anti-communist groups in America.
Because we really believe that we're going to get nuked by the Soviets. And if you could control somebody's mind and send them into the Soviet Union, or control somebody's mind through television or implanting things in their head, they would have done it.
These declassified 1950s era documents outline a secret CIA program to not only exploit the human mind, but also to create and deploy a hypnotically controlled agent.
It's an artificially created multiple personality where there's a new identity hidden behind an amnesia barrier. You call out this new identity with hypnotic verbal access codes and signals of some kind. You give it the assignment, whether it's courier, infiltration, or assassination assignment. The assignment's carried out. And then when you switch back to the regular person, they have no memory for anything to do with the entire operation.
That's the theory. But did the CIA ever create its own Manchurian candidate? Linda McDonald says she's living proof that the CIA tried.
Virtually the first 26 years of my life are gone. Wait.
1961. Linda is a young mother with 3 small children in Quebec, Canada. After she gives birth to twins, she suffers a severe bout of postpartum depression. Her husband sends her to Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute and world-renowned psychiatrist Dr. Ewan Cameron.
These are times that spur the spirit.
He had quite a reputation for being very good.
What McDonald doesn't know is that Dr. Cameron receives money from the CIA and the Canadian government for his mind control research. Declassified documents from MKUltra reveal Cameron is experimenting with a technique called depatterning.
What he did was he gave people massive amounts of electroshock, reduced them to vegetables that way. He would keep them asleep for weeks at a time with barbiturates, and then he would have tape loops played literally thousands and thousands and thousands of times over and over and over. So he's trying to wipe out their existing personality and restructure it according to these tape loop instructions.
Linda McDonald is one of Cameron's human guinea pigs.
I had 109 electroconvulsive shock treatments in less than 5 weeks. And the purpose of this was to wipe my memory.
Gone are her memories of childhood, school, getting married, having children.
If I think about it, I'm angry. I can't really afford to think about it because I have a life now and I have to get on with it.
But there are other experiments even stranger.
The bull was immobilized with a tranquilizer dart and 21 electrodes were implanted in his brain.
In this 1965 experiment, this 800-pound bull is under the control of Dr. Jose Delgado.
Now Professor Delgado faces the bull himself.
A Yale University researcher, secretly financed by the Office of Naval Intelligence.
Again, the animal turns on command.
But closely watched by Sidney Gottlieb at the CIA. With the push of a button, Delgado can make the charging bull stop in its tracks.
Again, the bull charges. But on signal, he stops, then turns around by radio command. Repeatedly, the bull was tamed by radio signals beamed to the electrodes in his brain.
He wrote a book and published a whole series of papers where he put electrodes into the brains of cats, monkeys, and human beings.
At Tulane University, Dr. Robert Heath, a neuroscientist, tries to use electronic brain stimulation to change the sexual orientation of a young male prison inmate.
I mean, it is a major, outrageous violation of basic human decency and all ethical codes in medicine.
LSD, electroshock, behavior modification. These cutting-edge techniques all show promise as mind control tools. But the most promising tool of all is far from cutting edge, until the CIA gets hold of it. Hypnotism. Hundreds of documents describe hypnotic experimentation and research, where reports boast of 100% amnesia, and patients are placed in a very deep trance state. In one legendary experiment, a CIA hypnotist demonstrates the possibilities of hypnotizing a person to become a controlled assassin.
He ordered her to pick up a gun and shoot somebody under hypnosis, except there were blanks in the gun, but she didn't know there were blanks in the gun.
She carried out these suggestions to the letter, says the report. It's not hard to see the next step for this technique, says John Marks. He describes an experimental program under the codename Artichoke, where the subject was to be a 35-year-old, well-educated foreigner who could be hypnotized and programmed by the CIA to involuntarily make an assassination attempt. And with that tantalizing scenario, the trail following the Manchurian candidate hits a dead end. Whether it was ever implemented or if there was a target, Marks doesn't speculate, but others do.
When you look at the millions and millions and millions of dollars that have been spent since the 50s, you look at the size of the military and intelligence budget, this can't be 2 or 3 or 4 people. This has got to be at least dozens or hundreds of operatives.